My name is Cole. I'm 28 years old, and I live in Los Angeles. I never had the courage to tell this story to anyone. But now, I have to. Because what I experienced that night still won't leave my mind. About 3 weeks ago, I matched with someone named Sophie on Tinder. Her profile was quite striking. She had only a few photos, but each one looked natural and sincere. Our conversation flowed incredibly well. We were so compatible that we decided to meet up within a week. When the day of our date arrived, I was a bit nervous, but I figured that was normal. Sophie suggested meeting at a fancy restaurant downtown. "I'll be there at 8 p.m., she said. When I walked into the restaurant, I spotted Sophie immediately. She really did look like her pictures, but something was off. Her smile, it was fake. It felt like a mask. That feeling slowly turned into an unsettling sense of unease. We started talking. Work, travel, music. But our conversation wasn't as effortless as it had been on Tinder. Sophie's answers felt rehearsed. That was when I realized something was wrong. And then I saw him. A few tables away, a man in a black hoodie sat alone. His head was lowered, as if he was trying to hide in the shadows. But the weird thing was, his face was always turned in our direction. Sophie kept talking cheerfully, but I couldn't focus on her anymore. Who was that man? Did Sophie know him? Or was this just a strange coincidence? As the meal progressed, Sophie suddenly turned to the waiter and said, "Let's get dessert, right, Cole?" A strange feeling crawled up my spine. We hadn't even mentioned dessert, yet the way Sophie looked at me, it was as if she was signaling something. On top of that, I noticed she took out her phone a couple of times. But when I watched closely, I realized she wasn't even looking at the screen before putting it back in her pocket. It might have seemed normal, but at that moment, my unease grew stronger. And then I noticed the man in the black hoodie was gone. At that point, my anxiety became unbearable. I took out my phone and texted my best friend, Adam. "Call me now. Make up an emergency." A few minutes later, my phone rang. Adam's voice was serious. "Cole, come to my place right now. It's urgent." I took a deep breath. This was my escape ticket. I quickly paid the bill and turned to Sophie. "Sorry, I have to go," I said. But the strangest thing was, Sophie's face looked relieved. It was almost as if she wanted me to leave. I left the restaurant and walked quickly to my car. I got in, shut the door, and took a deep breath. But at that moment, I saw a shadow in the side mirror. The man in the hoodie, standing behind my car, motionless in the darkness, watching me. I froze. I didn't dare turn around. I just gripped the steering wheel and sped away. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. And I had just walked right through it without even realizing it. When I got home, I was still shaking. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and checked Sophie's Tinder profile. She had messaged me. "Where are you? We need to talk." A cold chill ran down my spine. Without thinking, I blocked her and deleted the app. For days, I felt an eerie emptiness inside me. Who was Sophie? Who was that man? Did they really have a plan? And the scariest question of all, did I really escape that night? I'm Emily. I'm 26 years old and live in Chicago. I love reading books, drinking coffee, and taking long walks in the fall. A few years ago, I moved here, and while trying to adjust to my new life, I found myself stuck in a routine. Maybe that's why I opened Tinder. That's where I met Alex. His first messages were kind, even a little funny, He seemed like someone I could trust. His bio read, "A traveler who loves nature. I enjoy camping, hunting, and gazing at the night sky. Life is meant to be explored." His pictures were just as impressive. In one, he was standing on top of a mountain. In another, he was playing the guitar by a campfire. And in one, he was leaning against an old black pickup truck, wearing sunglasses and smiling. He looked warm and confident. I've never been fond of being alone at night. The darkness has always made me uneasy. So when Alex suggested a night under the stars in the woods, I hesitated. But at the same time, it sounded romantic. A little adventure wouldn't hurt, I thought. I realized, far too late, how big of a mistake I had made. That night, by the time Alex came to pick me up, it was close to midnight. His black pickup looked exactly like the one in his photos. As I got into the truck, I caught a faint scent of dirt. My eyes landed on a few deep scratches inside the door panel. Alex smiled and said, "I love hunting." I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe he was really into it. But looking back now, I realize he never mentioned what he hunted. We chatted during the drive, but instead of talking about himself, Alex kept asking me questions. And his questions were odd. How many siblings do you have? How's your relationship with your family? If something happened to you, would they notice right away? At first, I thought they were just casual questions. Maybe he was just trying to get to know me. But now, I understand. He was assessing me. When we arrived at the woods, things got even stranger. Alex laid out a blanket, but my eyes were fixed on something else. The handle of a knife strapped to his belt. A hunting knife. It seemed ordinary enough, but something about it unsettled me. "Why do you carry that?" I asked. He laughed. "Just for safety." But something inside me snapped. He hadn't even taken the knife out yet, but I was already afraid of him. My instincts were screaming, "You need to get out of here." Now Alex kept talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. The only thing on my mind was escape. And then I saw headlights in the distance. At that moment, my instincts took over. As soon as Alex got distracted, I bolted. I thought about running to his truck, but then I remembered he had the keys. So instead, I sprinted toward the road. Behind me, he yelled, "I wasn't going to hurt you." He was lying. We both knew it. Just then, the truck on the road came to a stop, and the driver opened the door. I threw myself inside. When I looked back, Alex was nothing but a shadow in the darkness, but I could still see the fury in his eyes. A week later, I told the police everything, but the only thing I could give them was a description of a black pickup with a broken rear window. Alex's Tinder profile, already deleted. It was as if he had never existed. I was trying to move on. But one morning, as I was drinking my coffee, I turned on the news, and a report caught my attention. An abandoned vehicle was found in the woods. No signs of anyone inside. Only a few scattered belongings. I read the article over and over. There was no information on who the truck belonged to. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen. I would never truly know what would have happened that night in the woods. But one thing was certain. Alex had every intention of hurting me. And now, he's still out there, somewhere. A few months ago, I matched with someone on Tinder. His name was Daniel. He looked quite attractive and charismatic in his profile. He had written that he was into hiking, reading books, and visiting art galleries. Basically, he seemed like my type. When we started texting, Daniel was incredibly polite and fun. He wasn't pushy or weird. It felt like he genuinely wanted to get to know me. The more we talked, the more I wanted to meet him in person. We met at a small cafe in a busy part of the city. He was handsome, but what really stood out was the way he spoke. Calm, gentle, and extremely attentive. He focused on everything I said, never breaking eye contact. But something made me uneasy. As he listened, he slightly tilted his head and stared at me as if he were memorizing every single word. It was strange, but I didn't think too much of it at the time. At the end of the date, he wanted to hug me. I didn't pull away, but there was a slight discomfort in my chest. When I got home, he sent me a message. "It was amazing meeting you, Anna. You're so special. We both know that, don't we?" The message felt a little odd. Who says something like that after just one date? But I brushed it off, thinking, maybe he's just a hopeless romantic. A week later, he asked to see me again. We decided to meet in a large park. It was midday, the weather was nice, and there were people around. But this time, Daniel felt different. When he saw me, he hugged me tightly, too tightly. He didn't let go of my arm and stared directly into my eyes. "Did you miss me?" I forced a smile and nodded, but a deep sense of unease settled in my stomach. Throughout the day, he kept saying things like, "We belong to each other. You know that, right?" At one point, I couldn't hold back and asked, "Why do you keep saying that?" His expression suddenly changed. His eyes went blank for a moment, then he smiled again. "I'm just joking," he said. But it didn't feel like a joke. After that, Daniel started texting me constantly. If I didn't respond, he'd send message after message. "Are you ignoring me? You don't want to make me angry, do you? I'd do anything for you. You'd do the same for me, wouldn't you, Anna?" At this point, I was scared. I blocked him, but this was just the beginning. He was watching me. A few days after I blocked Daniel, I left my apartment to go to work. That's when I saw his car parked at the corner of my street. He wasn't looking directly at me, but I knew he was waiting for me. I immediately called a taxi and left. That night, I received a message from a fake Instagram account. "You're avoiding me, aren't you? But I know you want me too." I locked down all my social media, even deleted some accounts. But he didn't stop. He was watching me from outside my home. One night, while watching TV, I saw a shadow pass by my window. My heart nearly stopped. I quickly turned off the lights and peeked through the curtain. He was there. Daniel stood among the trees across from my apartment, staring directly at my window. I wanted to grab my phone and call the police, but my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped it. The screen went dark as it hit the carpet. Panicking, I tried to turn it back on, but my battery was nearly dead. I could have used my computer to send a message, but I couldn't move. Just as I decided to run for the door, my phone screen suddenly lit up. The battery hadn't died completely, and there was a single notification. "Why are you calling the police on me?" "That hurts my feelings, Anna. You don't want to do that, do you?" He was watching me, and I realized this wasn't the first time. I ran for my life. I wasn't safe in my own home. I decided to escape through the back exit. Quietly, I put on my shoes, held my breath as I opened the door, and stepped outside. Just as I was about to leave the building, I heard footsteps approaching from the street. Daniel was coming. I ran as fast as I could. I could hear his footsteps chasing me. My heart pounded violently. I screamed for help, but the street was empty. When I reached the main road, I saw a taxi. Desperately, I waved my arms, signaling it to stop. The driver gave me a weird look, but pulled over. I jumped in and slammed the door shut. When I looked back, Daniel was standing at the corner, watching me, smiling, like this was just a game. I spent the night at a friend's house. The next day, I went to the police and reported everything. But since I had no solid proof, they said there wasn't much they could do. I couldn't prove he was stalking me. So I moved immediately, changed my phone number, and deleted all my social media accounts. I never saw him again. But every night I still feel like someone is watching me in the dark. And sometimes I still get silent calls from unknown numbers.